Hi folks, hope you're doing well. So I'm going to go over a subject I've gone over a few times before. Yeah, I've definitely covered this a few times before. So, the Gospel of John, chapter 17, from verse 14. Yeshua says, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Then verse 16 says, they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Well, as I said before, I've raised the question, okay. Therefore, if Yeshua is saying they are not of the world, then what are we of? Yeah. Remember, at this point in time, John 17, it was pretty close to the time when Yeshua was going to be leaving us. Yeah, so therefore, his time ministering and the amount of words in red that we were going to have were now going to be limited by the fact that it was the end of his human life. Or that was coming up very, very soon. And he chose to talk about this. So therefore, obviously this is pretty important. Especially if we're talking about identity. Because that's what... This is talking about identity, isn't it? Of course it is. When it's saying what you're of, that's identity. So, of course, your identity has to be incredibly important, doesn't it? But how many times in a church have you ever heard the preacher or teacher or pastor or whatever you want to call this person, or they want to call themselves, how many times have you heard them preach this or teach this or ask the question, what are you of? How many times have I asked the question? I imagine over the past 2 years, probably at least 10 times. That's because the question is vitally important. Well, as I said before, if you identify, as most churches do, as a Christian, therefore as a sinner, you're going to do what sinners do, which is sin. Because as a sinner, if that's your identity, you're going to do according to your nature. And your nature as a sinner is to sin. Yeah. But as I've said before, in understanding John 17 verse 14 to 16, you have to understand, okay, what was Yeshua of? Because he says, they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. So therefore, okay, he's saying that he is not of the world. So what is he of? And when he said, just as I am, again, language, we've got to understand. We are just as he is. That when he says that, he's saying that the nature that he had should be our nature, because we are of the same as he was of at that time. Now, of course, going forward in a meeting doesn't mean that you suddenly become not of this world. or not of the world, should we say? Well, no, it doesn't. Because, as I've said, you give your life to God, you take it back. You give your life to God, you take it back. You give your life to God, you take it back. As a young believer, that's going to happen time and time and time and time again, especially if you're not being helped in church. Understand that. If you're not being helped in church to deal with your issues, well then your issues are going to overtake quite often, aren't they? Yeah. And you're going to try and control certain things, especially again when the church is teaching us that it's our job to resist the devil. Because yes, it does say it in Scripture, but again, we need to understand what the Scripture is saying. Because if you're trying to resist the devil in certain areas, then it means that you're trying to control those areas of your life. Which means that those areas of your life you've taken back from God. Right? Because why are you trying to resist the devil in certain areas of your life if you've given your whole life to God, and if you truly have done that? Because now that life belongs to God. It's up to him now to tell the devil to sod off. Yeah? That is true. So, yeah. We need to have understanding. I say very much identity has to be incredibly important. Because, I mean, what a lot of people are starting to understand now is church has been misleading people about their identity, about what their identity truly is. Now, of course, put it this way. I asked the question before. Can we truly claim that ministers would be intentionally misleading people? No, I don't think we can. I don't think it's intentional. I mean, it's just based upon their understanding and the way they've been taught to do things. Because, as I say, they use the world system to train their people. So, yeah. They therefore are very much of the world. So therefore, do they really want to talk about that you're not supposed to be of the world when they're doing things very much of the world? Well, again, I'm not saying even that's intentional. But if you are doing things very much of the world, you may shy away from subjects that are talking about that maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Yeah. But who you are matters. And what you're of is talking about who you are now. So as I say, as you get older, as you get more mature, certainly as you come into maturity as a believer, you should come into understanding about what giving your life to God actually means. I've done videos about that in the past, talking about, what that's supposed to really look like. And of course, as I said earlier, going forward in the meeting is not what that's supposed to actually look like. But we're supposed to have the same nature as Yeshua had. We're supposed to be of the same that he was of. Now, he had the nature of his Father in heaven. We're supposed to have the same. So, how do we get that? That's the question. Well, if you want to spend more time on asking, what are we of, as I say, twice there in verse 14 and verse 16, Yeshua said, they are not of the world just as I am. Not of the world. So I think him using just as I am twice I think he's saying we are just as he is. That is our identity. Now, of course, it's the same as so many things. There are 7 billion people in the world. Most of those people have been forgiven of their sins. Their sins have been covered. It's just they don't know how to walk in that. Yeah, healing. By his stripes you are healed or were healed. Either way, there are a lot of people that are sick and in need of healing. Well, that's already been done. It's just that people don't know how to walk in it. The same is about being not of the world. If we are supposed to be sons, that's all very well and good, but people don't know how to walk in it. And that's the thing now. That's where we are at this moment in time. But, yeah, identity, as I say, is incredibly important. Because if you don't know who you are, who you truly are, then, how do you have any idea whatsoever as to what you're capable of if you don't know who you are? Where the Bible talks about you're supposed to resist the devil, or what does that mean? And how can you do that if you are a sinner? If you are a Christian and you are just a sinner, how are you going to be able to resist the devil? Whereas if you understand that you're a son, you understand the way you resist the devil is that you focus on your relationship with Father. You don't focus on that. Because I know that if I try and take the devil on, he's got thousands of years of experience of defeating people. I don't have any experience really of defeating spiritual beings. So therefore, would it be a wise move for me to try and take him on? Or try and stand firm against his attacks? No. That seems to be a bit reckless. So, no, I have no desire, because I've lived far worse than reckless through most of my Christian walk. So now I'm saying no. I'm just going to focus on my relationship with Father and let him deal with the rest. And I wish you well. Ask the questions. There are questions there to be asked. Ask them. Understanding things like John 17:14-16 really is vitally important. You've got to do that. You've got to come into knowledge and an understanding of that, so you can walk in it, and so you can be of what you're supposed to be of. Because if you're of this world, then you're not of God. So therefore, you don't want to be in that situation. You were in that situation before. So, to understand you've been in church for all those years and you're still of God, and you're still of the world, that ain't good. Change it. Be of what you're supposed to be of. Maybe he's just having a scratch. Well, we're not going to go out for another walk. He's been out for 3 already today. And with every walk he's had a swim, so he's a happy little bambini. So there you go. Have a fantastic rest of the weekend. Be blessed. Be a blessing. And go and speak to your Father in heaven. Spend some time with him. If you haven't done that already, then he's been waiting for you. So enjoy. Go and spend some time with your loving Father. Speak to you soon. Amen.